بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. We begin by first praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sending our peace and blessings and salutations on our final prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. As to what follows, we begin our sharh of Safinat al-Salah yesterday, and inshallah ta'ala we'll continue from where we left off. We stopped at where the author said, Furudul ghusli ithnani. The conditions or the pillars of ghusl are two. The furud, the main components, and the pillars of ghusl are two. Al-awwalu, the first is نية الطهارة للصلاة أو رفع الحدث الأكبر أو نحوهما بالقلب مع أول جزء يغسله من بدنه فما غسله قبلها لا يصح فيجب إعادة غسله بعدها. So here the author rahimahullah, he says that the first main component of ghusl is that you have to have the intention. And once again, this intention is in the heart. And when you're making the intention, you're making intention for making yourself tahir for salah, or to uplift yourself from raf'ul hadath al-akbar, to remove yourself from the major state of impurity, or anything to show that you are not just taking a regular shower, but you are doing a spiritual shower, right? So the intention should be there. And you'll see in the second condition that there's no difference between a regular shower and a ghusl. The only thing that differentiates between them two is the niyyah. Because the second condition is ta'mim badanihi bil ma', to make sure that your whole body is immersed in water, that water touches every part of your body. So if you just hop in the shower, you have intention, and you make sure that water touches every part of your body from head to toe, there's no dry spots, then you have ghusl, right? There is the sunnah ghusl, which is making the wudu prior to it, doing the right side, doing the left side, making sure you do your hair 3 times. That is the sunnah acts. But we're talking about the furud. Remember, once again we mentioned in fiqh we learn the main pillars, the bare minimum requirement for your act of worship to be valid. So if a person makes intention and they jump inside a pool, completely submerge themselves in a pool, and they come out, do they have ghusl? Yes, they have ghusl, right? If the intention was there, right? So the intention is very important. And the second is making sure that water touches the entire body, the bashara, the sha'ar, right? Also, he says, the author here, فَيَجِبُ غَسْلُ بَاطِنِ كَثِيفِ الشَّعْرِ, يعني making sure that you reach the depth of the hair. وَيَجِبُ غَسْلُ مَا يَرَاهُ النَّاظِرُ مِنَ الْأُذُنِ. Likewise, when a person is looking at you, what they see from your ears, you have to make sure you wash it. Doesn't mean you have to go inside the ear. وَمَا يَظْهَرُ حَالَ التَّغَوُّضِ مِنَ الدُّبُرِ وَطَبَقَاتِهِ. This is also an important point. You also need to wash the inner folds of your behind, right? So what does this mean? So when you are relieving yourself and you are like in the squatting position, there is more parts of your body, yani your behind, that becomes the inner parts that appear when squatting for relieving oneself must also be washed. Okay? So if you were to squat and behind the area, wherever the defecation is coming out, you have to make sure that you're able to get in around that area as well. He says also here, وَمَا يَظْهَرُ مِنْ فَرْجِ الْمَرْأَةِ إِذَا جَلَسَتْ عَلَى قَدَمَيْهَا. Also, what becomes apparent from the woman's private part, what becomes visible when she sits on her feet, meaning when she's in a squatting position, she must also wash that, right? So water must reach any part that becomes externally visible in such a posture, right? when she's in that position. If she were to squat, whatever becomes apparent from her private part, she has to also make sure she gets around there. Also, وَبَاطِنُ قُلْفَةِ مَنْ لَمْ يُخْتَنْ وَمَا تَحْتَهَا. Another thing that also needs to be washed is the inside of the foreskin of one who is not circumcised, right? And what is beneath it. So if someone was not circumcised, they must make sure they get around the foreskin and what's around it, because there's a layer of skin for those that would not be circumcised, and we know the importance of it being wajib for the men, but if a new Muslim was to not be circumcised, or they were in a situation like that, then they would need to make sure they have to do a bit more washing than the one that is circumcised. فيجب أن يجري الماء بطبعه على كل ذلك. And likewise, once again, we said this for wudu as well, the water must run and flow, right? You cannot be taking patches of water on yourself, but the water must run to ensure that it reaches ta'meem al-badan, that your whole body is soaked and there are no dry spots. The third condition, continuing on the conditions of salah, is دخول الوقت وهو زوال الشمس للظهر وبلوغ ظل كل شيء مثله زائدا على ظل الاستواء للعصر وغروب الشمس للمغرب وغروب الشفق الأحمر للعشاء وطلوع الفجر الصادق المعترض جنوبا وشمالا للفجر فتجب الصلاة في هذه الأوقات. So here he says, now he starts talking about the entrance of the prayer times. When do the prayers come in? So he says the first is dhuhr. وهو زوال الشمس. The dhuhr time begins when the sun passes its highest point in the sky. So the sun, after it rises, it's in the zenith, right? At that moment, it is makruh, disliked to pray at that time. Rather, it's from the times that it is haram to pray. As soon as it begins to descend, that is the first time for dhuhr. Zawalu shams, right? Once the sun begins to descend, this is the time of dhuhr. And when does the time of asr come in? So the time of dhuhr ending and the beginning of asr is right after one another, right? So it's like my two fingers right now that are connecting, they connect to a point where one of them ends and the other one starts, but is right beside each other. That is exactly the two different salahs, right? The end of one is literally the beginning of the other one. So when is the beginning of asr? When the shadow of an object becomes equal to its own length, plus the shadow it had at the zenith time. So when it was at the zenith, there was a small shadow. Once the shadow becomes the same size as the object, then that is you're also adding زائدا على ظل الاستواء. You're also adding the length of the zenith shadow as well together. That is the beginning of asr and the end of dhuhr. وغروب الشمس للمغرب. Maghrib is very simple. The sun setting. As soon as the sun sets, that is the beginning of maghrib time. وغروب شفق الأحمر للعشاء. And for isha is the redness to go away. Right? The redness in the sky is the end of maghrib and the beginning of isha. Okay? وطلوع الفجر الصادق المعترض جنوبا وشمالا للفجر. And the fajr time is when the appearance of the true dawn appears. And that is a horizontal white line that spread across the horizon will appear. Right? There will be a horizontal white line. The Fajr al-Kadib is the one that's before it. It's known as the false Fajr, where there is a bright line that goes vertically. I wish I can show you guys on a diagram, but it shows, you can see it when you are in the wilderness here, in these places that have light and pollution, you are probably not going to be able to see. But there's going to be a white light across the horizon. This is to show, it's known as the Fajr al-Sadiq, the truthful Fajr, the true Fajr, because the other one is known as Fajr al-Kadib. It's a light that appears vertically and it goes away. It doesn't remain, right? فَتَجِبُ الصَّلَاةُ فِي هَذِهِ الْأَوْقَاتِ. So he's mentioning that Salah is wajib during these times. وَتَقْدِيمُهَا عَلَيْهَا وَتَأْخِيرُهَا عَنْهَا مِنْ أَكْبَرِ الْمَعَاصِي. You are not allowed to pray before the time, nor are you allowed to delay it. If you pray before the time, that salat is null and void, and it is from the major sins. And if you delay it from its time, that salah is qada, and is also from the major sins. Okay? So you have to make sure that you pray the salah within its time. إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. Yes. You can pray Maghrib? Yes. Yes. You are not sinful as long as you prayed within the time. And that is the benefit of having time between the salahs, that Islam does not tell you to pray immediately. Of course, praying in the first time is what? It's from the best of virtues, right? Ayyul amali afdal. When the Prophet ﷺ was asked which deeds are of the best, what did he say? As-salatu ala awwali waqtiha. Praying the prayer at its first time. So if you pray it as soon as the salah comes in, the reward is immense and great. But if you don't do it, you just lose on that fadila. You just lose on that reward, but your salah is still valid and you're not sinful if you pray within that time period. Right? So each salah, except for Fajr, has the time limit until the next salah. Right? Fajr, when is the time limit up to? Till sunrise, right? But each salah you're able to pray until the next salah. So Isha, you have all the way until when? Until Fajr, right? Until Fajr. But you should not delay it past a certain time. Then you fall into waqtul karaha, right? The dislike time when it's close to the last third of the night and whatnot. But it's still valid. It's not qada. It's not qada. It's ada. You've fulfilled it in its time. So he says here, وَتَقْدِيمُهَا عَلَيْهَا أو تأخيرها عنها من أكبر المعاصي وأفحش السيئات. So delaying its time or praying it before is from the major sins, and is also from the most ugliest of sins, right? Because salah is the first commandment after the shahada. So we must take that serious. It is the first action that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask you, and being neglectful in it and delaying it, right? And not performing it in its time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, وَيْلُ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ, right? Those people that are, that Allah prepared that wail for is those that are neglectful of their salah. And as Ibn Abbas, he said, those are the people that pray after the time has exited, right? So it's a serious matter, and it's from the major sins. الرابع ستر ما بين سرة الرجل وركبته. The fourth condition, or the fourth condition of salah is to cover the awrah. To cover the awrah, and the awrah for the men is what's between his ما بين السرة والركبة. ما بين سرة الرجل وركبته. Between the knees and the belly button to the knees. They have to be covered. Okay? He says, وَجَمِيعِ بَدَنِ الْمَرْأَةِ إِلَّا وَجْهَهَا وَكَفَّيْهَا. And the entirety of the woman's face except the hands and the feet. وَيَجِبُ عَلَيْهَا سَتْرُ جُزْءٍ مِّن جَوَانِبِ الْوَجْهِ وَالْكَفَّيْنِ. And it becomes obligatory for her to also cover part of the face, جوانب سطر جزء من جوانب الوجه والكفين, that you cover part of the face as well as part of the hand, because ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. Remember for wudu, what do we say? You have to ensure, you go a little bit past the elbow to ensure that you've reached the elbow, right? The face, we said, go a little bit past so that you can ensure that you've reached from the beginning part of the face. Same with the chin, same with the ears, same with the feet, go a little bit past the ankle, same. So if her face is supposed to be covered, what she should do, the only thing that she can expose is her face and her hands. So to ensure, what does she do? She adds a little bit of her face in it, including, and a little bit of the hands. يعني ستر جزء من جوانب الوجه والكفين, to ensure that the fardiyya has been reached. Make sense? No. Yes. So for the men, he's going to mention here, وعلى الرجل ستر جزء من سرته وما حذاها. Likewise, the man, and he says وجوانب ركبتيه. Also for the men, what he should do is he should also cover part of the belly button and part of the knees. Okay, so the belly button, وَمَا حَوَاهَا, means if you were to make a circle around it, you would have to cover everything around it, right? So anything around that belly button area, as well as the knee as well. So part of it needs to also be covered. So the shoulders, if a person was to pray with, what do they call them? I don't want to say tank tops. There's another name for it. We're not going to say that. If a man was to pray with that, their salah is valid, but it's disliked. Right? It's disliked to pray with your shoulders exposed. The top is fine, as long as part of your surah is covered. It's best, of course, if you cover your entire belly button and the entire knee as well. But if you had part of it covered, then it's fine as well, inshallah ta'ala. Now, yes? You had a question? Isha extends all the way till Fajr. When the redness of the sky goes away, it becomes completely black. No. Also, what is upon them is وَعَلَيْهَا السَّتْرُ مِنَ الْجَوَانِبِ لَا مِنْ أَسْفَلِ. لَا مِنْ أَسْفَلَ. Meaning, the man, for example, or both of them, what is upon them is to cover the sides, not underneath. So, let me give you an example. You're wearing a garment that is very loose, very big. Okay? By the way, also from the top too. It has to be covered from the top and the sides. Okay? So if you're wearing a garment that's very loose, if someone was to look on top of you, or you look on top and you can see your awrah, that salah is not valid. Or if they were to look at you from the sides and you have holes on your sides, that salah would be valid. But if they can see your awrah from underneath, that's fine. So if someone was praying on top of here, they have a ma'awis on, okay, and they have nothing wearing underneath, and we were to look up and we see their salah is valid, right? So it's not a condition for the asfal to be covered. Does that make sense? So the top has to be covered, so it has to be close to your body, and the sides cannot have holes in it. Anywhere that's the awrah cannot have holes. But if the bottom is uncovered, then there's no problem. If someone was to look from the bottom, they're not supposed to look, but if they did, your salah is still valid. Okay? That's not a condition for you to have anything covered from the bottom side. No. ويجب أن يكون الساتر يمنع حكاية لون البشرة. And likewise, it is obligatory for the clothing that you're wearing, whatever you're wearing, prevents the color of your skin being seen. Right? So it can be see-through. You can't be wearing something that is very thin where a person can see your skin color. Right? Something very light. It has to cover the color of your skin. Yeah. For what? On the female? It should not be tight on her where it shows the curvage and whatnot, but is it Does it nullify the prayer? As long as it's satr, it covers the body. But as for here, the scholars they mentioned, it can't show the skin color of the body. Yeah, but it's disliked. It's definitely disliked. I don't know if it would be from the nullifiers of prayer, Allahu alam. But this is not something that should be done for sure. The woman should wear loose clothing and abaya and whatnot. But is it something that would nullify her prayer? Allahu alam. I wouldn't. Allahu alam. وأن يكون ملبوسا أو غير ملبوس. Here there's something missing in there. It pretty much means وأن يكون مستويا. يعني there has to be something that the person has to be wearing that thing that is being the thing that covers their aura, has to be something that they wear that is fit to fit the body, is made for the body, or it's something that they wrap around themselves. فَلَا تَكْفِي ظُلْمَةٌ وَخَيْمَةٌ صَغِيرَةٌ. It is not allowed, it is not sufficient for you to pray in the dark, nor for you to pray in a small tent. So the thing that should be covering your body should be something that you wear or something that you wrap yourself around with. So it doesn't have to actually be something that you actually put on, like a thobe or a shirt or whatnot. What he's trying to say here is you cannot just pray in the dark in being naked and say no one is here, no one sees me, or go inside a tent that's so small that it just fits you and you say this is my clothing, right? I'm inside it. No. So it has to be something that is worn, right? And remember we said it has to be something that, right, the sides has to be covering and the top has to be covering. So a tent, does it do that? Darkness, does it do that? No. So it has to be something that is worn, or something that you wrap yourself around with. You could just wrap yourself, grab a garment, a long garment, wrap yourself around it, covers your aura. That is sufficient. Ihram, for example, like ihram, right? الخامس استقبال القبلة بالصدر في القيام والقعود وبالمنكبين ومعضب البدن في غيرهما إلا إذا اشتد الخوف ولم يمكنه الاستقبال فيصلي كيفما أمكنه ولا إعادة عليه. The fifth condition is facing the Qibla. How do you face the Qibla? With your entire body. Your chest, while you're standing or sitting, you're facing it. Okay? Your shoulders are facing it. Right? But if your head is not facing it and you're turning around here while you're in Salah, is your Salah valid? Yes, it's valid. Okay? This is something that is just really disliked. And a lot of movements like that can nullify your prayer, as you'll see later on when we talk about the things that nullify the prayer. But as long as you're facing the Qibla, then your Salah is valid. Right? Your entire body, your chest, whether you're sitting or standing, you're facing towards it, is a condition. إِلَّا إِذَا اشْتَدَّ الْخَوْفِ. Except if there is extreme fear. Right? Like Salatul Khawf. Right? In a situation where there's intense fear, there's combat, you're running for your life, right? In that case, and you cannot face the Qibla, in that case, فَيُصَلِّي كَيْفَمَا أَمْكَنَهُ. You pray however you can. Right? You're running around, you're running for your life, you say Allahu Akbar, you recite Fatiha as you're running and escaping. Your Salah is valid. Right? It shows us the importance of the preservation of time. You can't say, oh, I was in intense fear, therefore I didn't pray. Right? I was in a battlefield and I couldn't pray. No, subhanAllah. Even in jihad, there's a specific salat called Salatul Khawf, specific way of praying. Right? To show the seriousness of the prayer and how it is never uplifted at any case. Especially for the men. The sisters, they have their break times in the week where they don't pray. But if you're a man and you've reached the age of puberty, right, and you're sane, you're Muslim, khalas. You have no excuse from the moment you've reached that age until you die. Salah is with you forever. Right? Got a text message today from a brother messaging me about Salatul Qasr. How can he shorten his prayer? Salatul Musafir, right? He was asking me questions. I'm traveling from here to here. Is it okay for me to shorten my salahs? I'll be in the flight before Fajr lands, before Fajr, after Fajr exits. Do I pray all my salahs in the plane? Right? As a Muslim, we should be asking these questions. Even if you're traveling, there's people that when they travel or when they're sick, they don't pray. Right? You have to, even in that situation. You pray sitting if you can't pray standing, you pray lying if you can't. It's never uplifted from the mu'min. السادس أن يكون المصلي مسلما. The sixth condition is that the person who's praying has to be Muslim. So it's not accepted from anyone that is a non-Muslim. Right? You have to have accepted Islam for your salah to be valid. Even though some of the scholars, they said, if this person enters the salah as a non-Muslim, when he gets to the Atahiyyat and he says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, at that moment he became Muslim. So his salah, at that moment he would have to repeat the salah because he entered it without it being valid. But you have to have been Muslim from the moment you entered the salah. Right? السابع أن يكون عاقلا. The seventh condition is that the person has to be عاقل. فالمجنون والصبي الذي لم يميز لا صلاة عليهما ولا تصح منهما. The seventh condition is that the person has to have reached the age of, have intellect. عاقل أن يكون عاقلا. They must have the mental capability and the capacity. Right? So the majnoon, which is who? The insane person. والصبي صبي الذي لم يميز. It's a very important point to mention here. What does it mean, الصبي الذي لم يميز? What does that mean? أحسنت. He hasn't reached the age of differentiating between good and bad. Right? And the scholars say, المميز, the mumayyiz is الذي يأكل لوحده ويشرب لوحده ويستنجي لوحده. Right? The mumayyiz is the one that can eat on his own, drink on his own, can do istinja, right? Go to the washroom. He doesn't need the help of his mom or dad to, clean him or her out, right? After they urinate or defecate, they can do it on their own. That is the mumayyiz, right? And usually it's around age 7, right? And this is the age in which the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Murru awladukum as-salah, wa hum abna'u sab'a." Order your children to pray at the age of 7, right? So if the child hasn't reached that, then لا صلاة عليهما, even the majnoon, there's no salah upon him. And if they were to pray, ولا تصح منهما. So it's a condition that a person has the mental capability, they're saying. الثامن أن تكون المرأة نقية من الحيض والنفاس. That the 8th condition is that the woman is pure from menses and hayd. Nifas and hayd. Nifas is postpartum and hayd is menses. So she's not in the state of menses, and nor is she going through postpartum bleeding. Right? If she's not going through those two, then that's a condition that she must be free from that. فالحائض والنفساء لا تصح صلاتهما. The woman on her menses and the person that's going through postpartum, their salah does not become valid. ولا قضاء عليهما. And they do not need to repeat those salahs. So the 7 days that she's on her menses, or the 40 days that she's going through her postpartum bleeding, she does not need to repeat those salahs. فإن دخل الوقت وهي طاهرة فطر عليها الحيض والنفاس بعد أن مضى ما يسع واجبات تلك الصلاة وجب عليها قضاؤها. And this is a very important point here. He says, the author, فإن دخل وقت وهي طاهرة. If the time for prayer came in while she was in the state of tahir, she did not have her menses, nor did she have her postpartum. بعد أن مضى ما يسع. After a time span has went where she can fulfill واجبات تلك الصلاة, that she can fulfill the pillars and the compulsory actions of the salah, وجب عليها قضاؤها. It becomes obligatory for her to repeat that salah. So Dhuhr came in, let's say Dhuhr comes in at 1 p.m. She was fine, she didn't have her menses nor her postpartum. 1:15 her menses came. Did she have enough time to pray salah? 15 minutes is more than enough for you to fulfill the wajibat of the salah. And she wasn't able to do it. Once her menses ends, she has to make up that salah. She has to make up that salah. وَإِذَا انْقَطَعَ الْحَيْضُ وَالنِّفَاسُ وَلَمْ يَعُدْ فإن كان في وقت الصبح أو الظهر أو المغرب ولو بقي منه قدر ما يسع الله أكبر وجب قضاء ذلك الفرض. And he says here, if her menses came to an end. Now this was her menses. The first one was her menses what? Coming, right? Now this is her menses coming to an end. If her menses came to فإن كان, okay, وإذا انقطع الحيض والنفاس, if her menses or her postpartum comes to an end. فإن كان في وقت الصبح, and there is time left to offer the Fajr prayer or the Dhuhr prayer or the Maghrib prayer. Okay, he's just mentioned those three salats for now. وَلَوْ بَقِيَ مِنْهُ قَدْرُ مَا يَسَعُ اللَّهُ أَكْبَرُ, even if there is enough time for her to say Allahu Akbar, وَجَبَ قَضَاءُ ذَلِكَ الصَّلَاةِ, it becomes obligatory for her to make up those salahs. So her menses ended right before Fajr came to an end. Enough time for her to say Allahu Akbar. Same for Dhuhr and same for Maghrib, she needs to repeat those salahs. وَإِن, نعم. No, doesn't, just the time that she's clean. وَإِن كَانَ فِي وَقْتِ الْعَصْرِ وَالْعِشَاءِ, but if it's for Asr and Isha, وَلَوْ بَقِيَ مِنْهُ قَدْرُ مَا يَسَعُ اللَّهُ أَكْبَرُ, and there is enough time for her to say Allahu Akbar, وَجَبَ قَضَاءُ ذَلِكَ الْفَرْضِ وَالَّذِي قَبْلَهُ, it becomes obligatory for her to pray that salah and the one before it. What is before Asr? What is before Isha? Maghrib. Those are known as the sister salahs, right? And when you're traveling, you pray them together. So if it's Asr, there's time left for Asr, for her to say Allahu Akbar, her menses came to an end. And same for Isha. She doesn't only make up those Asr and Isha, she also makes up the salahs that were before it. وَهُوَ الظُّهُرُ وَالْمَغْرِبِ, she makes up Dhuhr and Maghrib with it. Because those are the prayers, they're known as sister. If you were a traveler, you pray them together. So they take the same ruling as if she missed both of them at the same time together. التاسع أن يعتقد أن الصلاة المفروضة التي يصليها فرض فمن اعتقدها سنة أو خلا قلبه عن العقيدتين أو تشكك في الفرضية لم تصح صلاته. So he says here another condition, another important condition for salah is that you believe that the salah that you're establishing in is a fard salah. Okay? So if you're praying Dhuhr, what should you have the intention of? Praying a Dhuhr fard salah. Right? You can't have intention that you're praying sunnah salah. So you have to have i'tiqad that the salah that you're praying has to be the actual fard salah. You can't be doubtful in it. Right? You have to have, or your heart cannot be khala qalbahu. Yani you cannot have a heedless heart where you didn't even have the intention of which salah you're praying. So they have to be present. العاشر ألا يعتقد ركنا من أركانها سنة فمن اعتقدها فمن اعتقدها فروضا أو خلا قلبه عن العقيدتين أو تشكك في الفرضية أو اعتقد سنة من سنن الصلاة فرضا صحت صلاته. He says here another condition is that you have to intend that the rukun that you're about to establish in the salah is actually a rukun. Right? ألا يعتقد ركنا من أركانها سنة. يعني the pillars of the salah, you shouldn't believe that they are sunnah. Right? But if a person doesn't know here the different types of sunnahs, أو اعتقد سنة من سنن الصلاة فرضا, there's عذر دار, there's يعني leeway here in the sense where he says صحت صلاته. But the important thing is that the pillars of salah are pillars and you don't mix them up with the sunnahs. الحادي عشر اجتناب مبطلات الصلاة الآتية في جميع صلاته. The 11th one is that you abstain from anything that nullifies the salah throughout the salah. The whole salah from beginning to end, you abstain from anything that would nullify your prayer. Okay? And he says it's going to come later on. We're going to see anything, all of those that nullify the salah. الثاني عشر, and the 12th one is معرفة كيفيتهما, or معرفة كيفيتها بأن يعرف أعمالها وترتيبها كما يأتي. The 12th condition is that you know how to perform the salah. معرفة كيفيتها, the know-hows of the salah. بأن يعرف أعمالها, that you know the actions of the salah, the order وترتيبها, which comes first, right? As you will see later on, inshaAllah ta'ala. وأما أركان الصلاة فتسعة عشر. Yes. Someone who is in a coma, yes, they would have to make up that salah after they regain their consciousness. Now he starts speaking about the arkanu salah. Okay, the arkanu salah, that is the pillars of the salah from beginning to end. Right? Inshallah ta'ala, we have about how many minutes? 35? Adhan is 35, right? Yeah, inshallah. Khalas. We're going to try to speed up so we can go through the book before Asr. Al-awwalu an-niyyah. The first one is the intention. Okay? You're intending to pray a salah. So he says, an-niyyatu bil-qalb. The niyyah is in the heart. فَيُحْضَرُ فِي قَلْبِهِ فِعْلَ الصَّلَاةِ. So he intends in his heart the action of performing that salah. وَيُعَبِّرُ عَنْهُ بِأُصَلِّي. So he said if it was to be said verbally, يعني it would be أُصَلِّي. Like you said in your heart, I am about to pray. وَيُحْضِرُ فِيهِ فَرْضِيَّتَهَا. وَيُعَبِّرُ عَنْهُ بِفَرْض. Also, he should have in his heart present the fardiyya, the obligatory, the fard of this salah, that this salah that you're about to pray is a fard salah. So وَيُعَبِّرُ عَنْهُ بِفَرْض. So if you were to translate that into wording, it would be fard. So أُصَلِّي فَرْضًا. I'm about to pray a fard prayer. Okay? Then he says وَيُحْضِرُ فِيهِ تَعْيِينُهَا. And also you put in your heart the ta'yin, the specific salah that you're praying. وَيُعَبِّرُ عَنْهُ بِالظُّهُرِ أو العصر أو المغرب. And if we were to translate that into words, it would be dhuhr or asr or maghrib or isha or subh or fajr. So it's like you are saying usalli fard al-dhuhr, right? I'm about to pray the obligatory dhuhr. And it's important that you specify that you're praying the obligatory dhuhr. Is there a sunnah dhuhr? Who can tell me? Is there a sunnah dhuhr or asr? Why do I need to mention obligatory and then mention dhuhr? Because isn't dhuhr or asr or any of those salahs already obligatory? Yes. Huh? Say, I don't understand. But I already mentioned dhuhr. Let's choose dhuhr for example. If I intend I'm going to pray dhuhr, isn't that enough? Why do I need to mention dhuhr, the obligatory salah? But the sunnah before dhuhr is not dhuhr. Yes. No, but it's still, even if they're traveling, they're still praying a dhuhr salah or a asr salah. Yes. Huh? No, I'm saying why, if you're already mentioning, I'm about to pray dhuhr, okay? Isn't dhuhr already a fard salah? Is dhuhr a sunnah salah or is it fard? But why is fard needed to be mentioned with dhuhr or asr or maghrib or isha? Ahsant. Imagine you already prayed dhuhr and you entered a masjid and they're praying dhuhr again. What are you praying? You're praying dhuhr, but this dhuhr is what? Sunnah dhuhr, right? It's not obligatory dhuhr, right? So ta'yeen is important, that you mention the dhuhr and you also mention the fardiyya, that you're actually praying a fard dhuhr or a fard asr or fard maghrib. No. So if you already prayed dhuhr and asr while you were traveling and you enter the city and now it's their asr time, so you can join the asr in the masjid and it'll be sunnah for you since you already prayed that asr. That's a perfect example, right? Now, or whether you prayed at another masjid home and then you came here to this masjid and they're praying asr and you joined, then it would be a sunnah asr for you, right? No. So he says the fact that there was فإذا حضرت هذه الثلاثة في قلبه, if these three combine in the heart of a person, that they're praying what? They're praying salah, that is obligatory, and that is meant the specific salah that you're praying, dhuhr, asr, maghrib, isha, fajr. As long as those three are meant, and he says قال الله أكبر نعم قال الله أكبر غير عاقلا عنها ويزيد استحضار مأموما إن كان جماعة. Okay, so those are the three that needs to be mentioned or must be present when you are making the intention. Then you would say Allahu Akbar. Okay, now he needs to also increase. He says, if you are someone that's praying behind the ma'moon, if you are not an imam, then you need to also have the intention that you're being led, that you're not the imam, right? Yani also, if you're praying behind a jama'ah, you also put in your heart as well that you are being led by an imam. الثاني تكبيرة الإحرام وهي الله أكبر. نعم. So he says قال الله أكبر غير غافلا عنها. You must also say Allahu Akbar without يعني being heedless of it. And if you are a ma'moom, then you would also increase in that you are a ma'moom, you're being led in a jama'ah. The second pillar, so the first one we just finished is the niyyah. The second is takbiratul ihram. The takbiratul ihram, which is the entering of the salah with the Allahu Akbar. وهي Allahu Akbar. And that is to say Allahu Akbar. So takbiratul ihram is to say Allahu Akbar. الثالث قراءة الفاتحة في القيام. And the third pillar is to recite Surah Al-Fatiha while standing. Right? Al-Qiyamu ma'a al-Qudra is a pillar of Salah. That if you're able to stand, then you must stand, and you are, we're going to see that in the fourth pillar, that Qiyam is a pillar. But the Fatiha have to be done when? While a person is standing, right? And a very common mistake people do, they're reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, right? As they're reciting, what do? They begin to go down. So that's why the author is mentioning here, قراءة الفاتحة في القيام, to recite all of Fatiha while standing. You can't begin to go down as you are finishing off the Fatiha. It's a common mistake people do. Right? أخطاء المصلين is from them is they will not finish the Fatiha completely in their stand. Towards the end, they're going to begin to go to their ruku'. So it has to be done. The whole Fatiha has to be done while a person is standing. الرابع القيام إن قدر, to stand when you are capable of standing. Yes. So here he says, القيام إن قدر ولو بحبل أو معين في الصلاة الفرض. يعني he's saying here that you should pray standing. Standing is a pillar, even if one person is capable by holding a habl. يعني if you were to hold a rope or to use a cane, for example, or you have a mu'inin, يعني you're praying beside somebody and someone is holding you, right? And there's no difficulty in that. If there's no difficulty in you doing that, then there's no harm. You should use that. But if it's difficult, like you're holding something and it's very difficult upon you, or you're using a cane and you can maintain, or it's very difficult for you to stand up, then you can sit down. But this is to show that we shouldn't be lax in sitting down when we can stand, right? And you find people, I remember I was listening to Shaykhana Shaykh Abdul Karim Khudair, Hafidhahullah, in Masjid Nabawi. One of the times he came, he was mentioning that he said, I seen with my own eyes a man who entered the masjid. He was, chit-chatting in the back, standing. And when it was salah time, for him to join the saf, he ran. He ran to join the saf so that he can go to his chair in the front. He sat down and he began to pray while sitting down. This is a man that was standing. He ran, okay? He can run. And now he is praying sitting down, right? Just because you're old doesn't give you the leeway to just sit, right? Old age is not an excuse to just sit down in prayer when you can actually stand up. And we see that all the time in our masjids too. People standing in the background all day talking, but when it's salah time, they grab the chair, right? They need to be educated that standing is a pillar of salah and you cannot take that lightly. No. الخامس الركوع بأن ينحني من غير إرخاء ركبته من غير إرخاء ركبته حتى تنال راحته ركبتيه. So here he says the fifth pillar is the ruku'. What it constitutes as the proper ruku'? بأن ينحني, that the person bows down, lowers themselves. من غير إرخاء ركبته. What does this mean? You're not allowed to lower yourself and bend your legs. You just lower no, you have to actually bow down. حتى تنال راحته ركبتيه, until his two palms, this area right here, this is known as the rahata, they are, it doesn't have to necessarily touch it, but it's tanalu, it's close to the, you're bent so much that your raha here, your palms, are by your knees, right? Holding it is sunnah, right? But what is required is that you do the bend to the point where now your knees are not bent, your back is bent, right? And your hands are dropped close to your knees. And holding it while your fingers are apart is sunnah to do as well. السادس الطمأنينة فيه بأن تنفصل حركة هويه عن حركة رفعه وتسكن أعضاؤه كلها. The sixth condition or the sixth pillar of salah is at-tuma'nina, and that is to be in a state of tranquil, to be in a state of sakina, not rushing. بأن تنفصل حركة هويه, to the point that you're going down and your حركة رفعه and your rising are different. That makes sense? So if I go down and I come back up, was there a difference between my rising and going back up? No, there wasn't. Because it was connected. I went down and I went back up. There's no tuma'nina here. So tuma'nina is that there is a pause between the lowering yourself and the rising of yourself. Rising back up. Right? So once you go in the ruku' position, you have to remain in that state. They say the qadr of saying subhanallah, that's the aqal. Right? Not meaning that you don't have to stay in there for too long. Even if you're able to say the qadr of saying subhanallah one time or subhana rabbi al-azim one time, that is sufficient. Then you come back up, which is the seventh pillar, al-i'tidalu bi an yantasiba qa'iman. Alright, now you come back up, that is the seventh pillar, coming back up until you're able to stand up straight. You're back up to now your standing position. And the eighth pillar is, once again, tuma'nina, because now you need to also be tranquil once you stand back up. At-tuma'ninatu fihi kama dhakarna fi al-ruku'i, the same tuma'nina that was mentioned in ruku', which is what? That your standing up position is separated from you're going for your sujood. So you have to get to a point where now you pause for a second, right? And then you can go for your sujood. التاسع السجود الأول. The ninth condition or the ninth pillar is the first sujood. بأن يضع جبهته مكشوفة على مصلاه. That you make the sujood and you put your forehead on the ground while it's exposed. Okay? You got to be able to lift your kufi up. Alright? So, making sure that your jabha, your forehead right here, also including your nose, touches the ground. متحاملا عليها قليلا. What does this mean? متحاملا عليها قليلا على غير متحرك. You bow down to the musalla, the place that you're praying in, and you are putting part of your weight on it, right? To the point that if you were, let's say praying on a pillow, that there would be a dent, something that had cushion in, it would go in. So you don't just get to a point where you're just putting your head on it, right? But you are putting your weight slightly on it, qalilan, right? Not too much, where you're just, denting yourself. Some people, they try to rub their head on it to get the sujood marks. Right? It should be natural. Right? It should be natural, but you should put a little bit more weight on the ground. بأن يضع جزءا من كل من ركبتيه ومن باطن كل كف ومن باطن أصابع كل رجل. نعم. So he says here, all these different parts, which is the 7 places that should be also touching the ground, also needs to touch and come into contact with the ground. And that is your 2 knees, your 2 hands, and the fingers of your toes. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said that I've been commanded to prostrate on the 7 parts. What are they? 2 hands. The face was already mentioned, the 2 knees, and the 2 feet, right? So all of that has to be touching the ground. Your 2 knees, your 2 hands, and your feet also have to be touching the ground. And they all have to touch the ground together even for a moment, right? So if you put yourself down, like you go into sujood position, for example, and you have your feet up, the whole time. And then you get back up and you say, Rabbi ighfirli, Rabbi ighfirli. That sujood is null and void. Because you didn't have your feet down, or your hand everywhere else was down, but your feet wasn't down. But if your feet touch the ground, and your hands and your knees and your head, even for a moment all together, and then for example you forget and you lift your legs, that's fine. But at least they have to be all touching together for a moment all together. العاشر الطمأنينة فيه كما ذكرنا في الركوع. The 10th one is طمأنينة, being in the state of tranquil once again, as was mentioned in ruku', that your sujood is separated from your rising, right? Because you will be doing the rising and sitting between the two sujoods, right? So you have to make sure that the sujood is, you're in the sujood position for a moment before you rise up, okay? الحادي عشر الجلوس بين سجدتين بأن ينتصب جالسا. The 11th one is to sit between the two sujoods in a way where now you are in a sitting position, upright. You're sitting upright position in the sujood position. الثاني عشر الطمأنينة فيه كما ذكرنا في الركوع. The 12th pillar is الطمأنينة, to be in a tranquil state when you are sitting between the two sujoods, as was mentioned in ruku' as well. الثالث عشر السجود الثاني مثل سجود الأول فيما مر فيه. The 13th pillar is the second sujood, as was already mentioned as well, making sure that you put your forehead down on the ground, مكشوفة, exposed. You're putting some weight on your head on the ground, making sure all those 7 body parts, limbs are touching the ground. الرابع عشر الطمأنينة فيه كما ذكرنا في الركوع. And the 4th pillar is طمأنينة, once again, to be in a state of tranquil. الخامس عشر الجلوس الأخير منتصبا. The 15th pillar is to sit for the last tashahhud. The sitting of the last tashahhud, once again, sitting upright, is the 15th pillar. السادس عشر قراءة تشهد فيه. The 16th pillar is to recite the tashahhud inside the last tashahhud, al-julus al-akhir, in the last sitting, in the last at-tahiyyat, that you recite the at-tahiyyat. Okay. السابع عشر الصلاة على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعد تشهد في القعود وأقلها اللهم صل على محمد. And from the pillars of the salah, number 17, is to send your peace and blessings on Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the least salah that you can do is saying Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. If you said Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, your salah is valid, right? That's the least. الثامن عشر السلام بعدها في القعود. The 18th pillar is to make the salam after the sitting. وأقله السلام عليكم. And the least is السلام عليكم. That is the least, right? So when you're ending your salah, if you say Assalamu alaikum, that's sufficient, right? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah is better though. التاسع عشر الترتيب بأن يأتي بالنية مع التكبير ثم الفاتحة في القيام ثم الركوع مع الطمأنينة ثم الاعتدال مع الطمأنينة ثم السجود الأول مع طمأنينته مع طمأنينته ثم الجلوس بعده مع طمأنينته ثم السجود الثاني مع طمأنينة فيه. So here he mentions the whole salah, right? He says the tartib, doing it in order, بأن يأتي بالنية, to come with the intention, مع التكبيرة, with the تكبيرة الإحرام. Then ثم الفاتحة في القيام, then to recite Fatiha while standing. ثم الركوع, then to do the ruku' مع طمأنينته, with its tranquil. Then to do the i'tidal, coming back up from the i'tidal with the طمأنينة. Then sujood al-awwal, with the tranquil, being in a tranquil state. Then the second sujood. نعم. ثم الجلوس بعدها. Then to do the sitting between the two sujoods with the طمأنينة. And then lastly, to do the second sujood with the طمأنينة as well, by being in a state of tranquil. فهذه ترتيب أول ركعة. This tartib completes your first rak'ah. ثم يأتي بباقي الركعات مثلها. Then a person would come with all the remaining salahs in that same fashion. إلا أنه لا يأتي فيها بالنية وتكبيرة الإحرام. Except that the person would not come with now the niyyah and the takbirat al-ihram, because they've already done that. Right? You're not going to do your takbirat al-ihram again in the salah, nor are you going to make a new intention, because you made that intention at the beginning. Okay? فإذا تمت ركعات فرضه جلس جلوس الأخير ثم قرأ التشهد فيه ثم صلى على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال اللهم صل على محمد ثم قال السلام عليكم. And he says here, then when a person comes with all the raka'at, all the obligatory actions of the salah, they would sit for the last tashahhud, then they would recite the tashahhud in the last atahiyyat, the last sitting. Then they would send their salah upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, send their peace and blessings on our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam by saying Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Then they would do ثم قال السلام عليكم. Then they would make the salam. وأركان الصلاة ثلاثة أقسام. He says now the salah, the pillars of salah, are divided into three different categories. So they are al-fi'liyya, al-qawliyya, and al-qalbiyya, al-qawliyya, and al-fi'liyya. Matters pertaining to the qalb, the heart, matters pertaining to statements in the salah, and there is the action of the salah. So in the salah there are three components. The first is matters pertaining to the qalb, and from amongst them is يعني وهو النية فقط. He says there's only niyyah. Then there are statements that are said in the salah, and then there are actions that are said in the salah. He says الأول قلبي وهو النية فقط. The first qism, or the first category of the salah, with pertaining to the pillars of the salah, is matters pertaining to the heart. وهو النية فقط. He said the first one is يعني it's only one, and it is niyyah. وشرطها أن تكون مع تكبيرة الإحرام وأن تكون في القيام. And the condition for it is that it must be done with the takbiratul ihram. So as you're saying, as you're making the intention and you're doing the takbiratul ihram, وأن تكون في القيام, and it has to be done while standing, the intention must be present. That you are praying a salah, that you are praying a fard salah, and you do ta'yin of the salah that you're praying. Are you praying dhuhr, asr, maghrib, isha, fajr? Right? Are you praying sunnah salahs? Are you praying tarawih? Are you praying janazah? So there has to be ta'yin of the specific salah. You have to make the intention of that you're praying salah, and you have to also differentiate between the fardiyya of the salah. Is it a fard salah or is it the sunnah salah? No, that's not. It has to be at the time of establishing the salah. So he says that is the condition. The first one, the first qism is qalbi, وهو النية فقط وشرطها أن تكون مع تكبيرة الإحرام وأن تكون في القيام. It has to be done at the time of تكبيرة الإحرام, and it has to be done while standing. الثاني القولية. The second category of the pillars of salah is statements, qawli, things that are said in the salah. وَهِيَ خَمْسَةٌ. And by the way, he's speaking about the pillar statements. He's not speaking about the sunnah statements. Okay, the pillar statements. He says they are takbiratul ihram. It's the takbiratul ihram. When do you make that? أول salah, the beginning of the salah. وقراءة الفاتحة. And the recitation of salah, the recitation of Fatiha. When is that done? في كل ركعة. In every rak'ah, you're reciting Fatiha. Okay. وقراءة تشهد. The recitation of the tashahhud. والصلاة على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. One is, by the way, one is the tashahhud. Salatu ala Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wassalam. When are they done? When are those three done? They're done. آخر الصلاة. At the end of the salah. Right? So, those are the 5. And he mentions that 3 of them are done when? At the end. They're done at the end of the salah. وشروط هذه الخمسة, and the conditions for these 5 are أن يسمع نفسه إذا لم يكن أصم ولا مانع من ريح ولغط ونحوهما وإلا رفع بحيث لو زال الصمم والمانع لسمع. So here, and this is a common mistake people do in their salah, and that is they do the statements in the salah, all the sayings of the salah, in a way where they're not even moving their lips or they're not reciting. So he says that you must recite to the point where you can hear yourself if there was no loud noise or wind or anything of that sort. What do people do nowadays? They go like this. That is just what? They're saying, I'm reciting the salah, I'm reciting the Fatiha, the Takbirat al-Ihram, all in my mind. Is that valid? No, right? So you have to be able to recite to a point where you don't disturb those around you, but to a point where I can hear myself. Can you guys hear me? Okay, let me move the mic. Can you guys hear me? No. Right? Did I disturb you? The person praying beside me cannot even hear me. But I'm able to hear myself. And I've done the recitation. Right? That is what recitation is. You have to actually recite to a point where even you can hear yourself. If you were to listen very carefully. The person beside you should not even be able to hear you. Right? So that's a very important point. You cannot just think the salah. Think the Fatiha. Right? نعم. وأن لا ينقص شيئا من تشديداتها وحروفها وأن يخرجها من مخرجها. These are important points with regards to the recitation once again. That you recite the salah, or you recite the Fatiha, or the adhkar and the du'as in the salah, the proper way. You mention all the tashdidat, right? The shaddas. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ, right? Like all the shaddas everywhere in the salah. وَأَنْ يَخْرُجَهَا مِن مَخَارِجِهَا. Also you are bringing out the words from his makhraj, right? You don't say الَّذِينَ, right? Very common mistake that people do. وَلَا الظَّالِّينَ, right? الَّذِينَ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ. And you have to be able to differentiate between the za and what's the common one that they make? Dal, right? نعم. وألا يغير شيئا من حركاتها تغييرا يبطل معناها. Right? And you shouldn't recite it to a point where it gets to a point where you are changing the meaning. Like you say, أنعمت عليهم. Right? Who's the one that gave you the ni'mah? Allah, right? نعمت عليهم غير المغضوب. When you say أنعمت, you are saying you are the one that gave the blessings. Right? So you shouldn't recite it to a point where you are changing the meaning. ولا يزيد فيها حرفا يبطل به معناها. Also increasing words that will change the meaning as well. وأن يوالي بين كلماتها. And likewise, you recite between one after the other. You don't take long pauses to the point where it's not in order. Right? So you have to make sure you do each one after the other. That's what muwala means, that you don't delay between when you say Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, there's no long pauses, but rather you're doing them one after the other, right? So there's a difference between al-muwala and tartib, which is the next one. It says وَأَن يُرَتِّبَهَا عَلَى نَظْمِهَا الْمَعْرُوفَ, right? That you do it in the order. So doing it in the order is important. So you don't say Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen and then say إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينَ and move around. You have to do it in order, and you have to do it in consecutively, one after the other, without long pauses. But if you pause for a moment, there's nothing wrong with that. Yes. Yeah. يعني there's tasamuh on those ones, even as long as the words don't really change the ma'na. يعني tajweed rules are there. It's not things that people are, يعني the ulama are very stern with when it comes to the salah. But as long as you don't do it to a point where you are changing the ma'na, you're adding a letter, right, etc. الثالث الفعلية وهي 13. The third qism of the salah, we mentioned the salah divides into three. There are qalbiyya, matters pertaining to the heart. There are matters pertaining to the statements qawliyya, and there are those that are fi'liyya. Okay? And he says وهي 13. There are 13 of them. Right? The qalbiyya was one, and that was, what was that one? What was the qalbiyya? The niyyah, intention. Okay? The qawliyya were how many? 5. What were they? Takbiratul Ihram, Fatiha, Tashahud, As-Salat ala Nabi, and As-Salam. Right? Hearing yourself is what you should do when you're doing the statements, when you're doing the qawliyya matters. Okay? So we're talking about the pillar actions here. Okay? So now the fi'liyya, the pillars of the fi'l, the actions that should be done are 13. Al-Qiyamu wal-Ruku'u. Al-Qiyam is what? Making sure you're standing position. Ruku', going into ruku'. Wat-Tuma'ninatu fihi, or Wat-Tuma'ninatuhu, يعني being in a state of tranquil. Al-I'tidal, rising up from the ruku'. Wat-Tuma'ninatuhu, being in a state of tranquil as well. As-Sujud al-Awwal, the first sujood, and is Tuma'nina. Al-Julusu ba'dahu, coming back up from the ruku', coming back up from the sujood, and the tuma'nina for it. The second sujood, the sujood al-thani, the tuma'nina, the tranquil state for it. وَوَاحِدٌ بَعْدَ آخِرِ رَكَعَةٍ وَهُوَ جُلُوسُ الْأَخِيرِ. And the last one is the sitting for the last tashahhud. وَوَاحِدٌ يَنْشَأُ مِنْ فِعْلِ هَذِهِ الْأَرْكَانِ فِي مَوْضِعِهَا وَهُوَ التَّرْتِيبُ. And the last one is the one that is a result of these things happening. It's not an action in and of itself, but it's a result of the actions that are happening, and that is the tartib, the order, right? So he put the order as a fi'l because it's as a result of the actions that are done in the salah. وشروط الأركان الفعلية صحة ما قبلها من الأركان ولا يقصد بها غيرها. And the condition for the pillars that pertain to actions for it to be valid is صحة ما قبلها من الأركان, that you do the act that is before it, right? The act that is before it, and also ولا يقصد بها غيرها, and you do not intend except that action. I'll give you an example. You're standing, you're praying, and you're reciting Fatiha. Now, after the Fatiha, you recite another surah, which is Sunnah. Then now you want to go into ruku'. You're ready to go into ruku'. But before you go into ruku', you see something flying about to hit you. What do? You duck. You duck and you get into the ruku' position. You're like, I'm already here anyways. Subhanallah. Is that ruku' valid? Did you do qasd of that ruku'? Or were you ducking from something? Right? So this is what it means here. You have to do qasd of each one, right? Even in sujood, you were in sujood, and you've seen a bug running around and you got up. You're like, I'm already here. Rabbi ighfirli, Rabbi ighfirli. Right? You have to do qasd of the ruku', the i'tidal, the sujood. You have to intend it. Right? You can't be doing it just out of, in the case that we gave, if something was about to hit you and you went in there, you just can't continue on with it. So it has to be intended. Each action of the salah, you have to intend to do it. وَأَمَا مُبْطِلَاتِ الصَّلَاةِ. And then now he speaks about the mubtilat. Is the mu'addin going to make adhan right now? Is he here? He told me 35. Okay. خلاص. We'll stop right here. Inshallah, we'll see Sheikh Abdullahi Bihi. If he needs all the way till Maghrib, if he doesn't need it, then inshallah ta'ala I'll come back and finish the last portion of it, bi'idhnillah. So he's going to be going from Asr to Maghrib, that's his time. If he uses it all up, then fabiha wa ni'ma, I'm off the hook. But if he finishes, then inshallah we'll finish what remains, bi'idhnillah. I just have 4 more pages left. And then we'll be able to wrap up. بإذن الله سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.